about potential links, but you couldn't say what they were, just that you were putting all 3 pieces of information into your rainbow spectrum. That was it for a while. Then you said you thought that more links were forming, but still you couldn't really explain what it was that you were looking at. Hooley was watching Roper and could see that he was paying very close attention to Cotter's words. The psychologist paused for a moment to give Roper a little more space to take things in. The DCI silently applauded Cotter for backing off. Roper hated being told what he was supposed to be thinking. He had a naturally challenging perspective at the best of times. After what felt like a couple of minutes of silence, but was probably a few seconds, Roper leaned back in his chair. He said, "You're telling me to take my time. I can see that is the only way to deal with this." The watching Hooley surprised himself by letting out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Now all he needed to do was find a way of seizing the initiative that Cotter's intervention had won. A thought hit him, and he grinned at Roper. "I've got an idea. At the moment, you're trying really hard to recreate the environment you were in when you first spotted the lynx. But why don't we go back to the beginning when you were first working here? I think we should start looking at each case in an individual way. But first, can you recall what it was that drew you to them in the first place?" "Actually, that bit is quite easy," said Roper. "It was because all 3 seemed a bit odd to me, and they all happened at about the same time, within a period of a few weeks. I mean, the amount of information that comes through here is amazing, but those 3 did seem to be worth a closer look." As he was talking, Cotter pushed himself away from the wall he had been leaning on. "Good to see things moving smoothly. You know where I am if you need me." They spent the rest of the morning looking at the details of the Australian drug case and stayed with it over their lunch break so they could exchange ideas. Getting their food followed the same pattern. Hooley couldn't help wondering what would happen if he opted for something other than a smoked salmon sandwich. Finishing up, he took a moment while he was eating to check the sports headlines on the BBC website and tossed his rubbish in the bin before going to wash his hands to get rid of the smell of fish. Roper had finished much earlier and was impatient to get going again. Sitting back at his desk, Hooley swiped a few crumbs, even though Roper was staring at him, anxious to get on. He knew that if he gave way to the younger man's unspoken demands, he would end up rushing about on Roper time, and that was a fate he was determined to avoid. Housekeeping over, he looked up. "Shall I go first?" Roper nodded. He took a sip of coffee and said, "Looking at it from your perspective, the thing which stood out is why this top-quality drug was suddenly being sold on the streets. Looking at the original intel provided by the Australians, the thing that came to mind was their opinion that this wasn't a mistake. The sort of thing where a powerful version of a drug gets out by accident and kills a load of addicts. How am I doing so far?" "You're on the money," said Roper. "The pure drug costs 5 to 6 times more than normal cocaine. It's the most concentrated form you can buy. No dealer would sell that at anything other than a premium price. That's assuming they could get hold of it. It's the sort of thing that normally only goes to the richest customers and the most discreet dealers." "Are you agreeing with the Australian view?" "Not at first. I thought it must have been a mistake. Maybe different grades of cocaine had been bundled together and somehow the best stuff had accidentally been sold at street level. But this went on for a couple of weeks and over a wide area. If it was a mistake, someone kept making the same one repeatedly. It made me think again. The guys at the top of the business are pretty smart. They make a lot of money out of this, and you don't do that by being careless. If any of them do take drugs, then you can be sure that only the very best will be provided for them. So I decided that making a mistake wasn't the answer. I did think about a rival gang moving in and flooding the market to cause problems. I read a while ago about 2 gangs in London who really hated each other. One of them deliberately released some super-strong heroin which killed a lot of addicts. The idea was to cause chaos and move in on the rival's territory. But that didn't